trust. And if you incorporate that family trust with a business trust, you can then conduct business in such a way where you can gain access to the asset side of those trust accounts, as well as managing the liability side of those accounts, because all accounts are considered closed accounts. They're closed accounts. They are closed accounts because you can't add intrusive value to those accounts that you establish. It is only through trusteeship that you are able to capture both sides of the ledger and have proper accounting, which is to keep it at a zero balance. So keep listening, because you're going to learn the fundamentals if you pay attention.
However, when they put $1 million in liability in a liability account, what was that? That was a drawing account. So they authorized the funds to come out of that liability account. The Federal Reserve Bank issued a check from Treasury in the amount of $1 million. Sent it to the SEC licensed broker, and in our minds we say, the SEC guy just sold our security to the Federal Reserve Bank for $1 million. What kind of funds are in that $1 million check that came out of the Federal Reserve Bank? Liability. So the liability funds get sent to the bank that induced you to get into the loan, and they got $1 million in liability Federal Reserve notes. What do they do with it? They create a drawing account for your straw man. Now this bank here has tendered a second contract to the public side of your trust. Would you like to borrow $1 million from us? Absolutely. You signed that on the left side because your straw man, the public trust, is a debtor. Where did the bank get the $1 million to loan him? From the drawing account, from the funding that came back through the sale of the security through the SEC licensed dealer. So the bank now withdraws the $1 million and sends that out to the beneficiary of the public loan, the guy you're buying the house or the property from. Is the seller happy? Like a lark, man, he's got fungible Federal Reserve notes that he thinks puts him in top of the world. There is a second contract with the straw man to feed $1 million in principal back into that drawing account that has been depleted from the bank when they wrote the check on the loan. When you bring $1 million in principal back into that account, you have met the obligations of the contract. What does the bank do? The bank then takes the $1 million that's restored to the drawing account, sends them to the SEC broker. They tell the SEC broker to go buy back that security. The SEC broker funds the money through the Federal Reserve Bank and says, go get the $1 million security under this Social Security number account. They deposit the $1 million in this liability account, bringing it back up full. Then they zero that against the asset because they debit out the asset, which is now canceled, and the asset account in the DTC under your SSN number goes down. but nothing in substance has changed. This man, box 2, he had a $1 million asset as long as this loan was in process. Once that contract over there for the property got paid off, the man lost his $1 million asset in the DTC. Where did his $1 million just go? He's got a priority lien on the asset of the home belonging to the straw man worth $1 million. Has the assets of box 2 trust man depleted? Or is he right back to where he was? Back to where he was. He's either got the security by drawable assets out of his account or a lien on collateral over in the public. He's fully secured. Is there any fraud any place in here? Would you like to explain to me where on this chart the bank screwed anybody? Is there anything illegal? Is there any unlawful? I don't know. We've got to do something with Brandon back there. He's got way too much time.
But wouldn't that be a lack of disclosure on the part of the bank? Because in reality,
are we
who
dealing
really
with
knows?
contracts or trusts here?
Well, are we
How
dealing
can
with
we
both?
be dealing with contracts when there's no lawful money?
That's right. So, but
The scheme of things, I'm just saying this is a roadmap of what's going on, and unless you show me where this isn't true, let's use the roadmap to get some viable remedies. There are plenty of remedies.
They frauded and this and that. That isn't the way to go, in our opinion. Might be effective and might forestall, might even get you some remedy, and there might be more than 1, 2, 5 cases. But the reality is, what is yet a consistent, permanent, viable, applicable theory that works? If it isn't, if you are defined that it's trust, then we're not going to be taking that standpoint any longer about arguing they've committed fraud, this, that, and the other thing, because we know that in trust, full disclosure is not required. And because of this, and under T.
Okay?
You want to go through one of the remedies that you would suggest?
Maybe.
Just asking.
Okay. Just answer.
I have a question with that process. Say if I was looking to buy a home and I got to the process where I've signed the first contract, could I not sign the second one, since in actuality the home is bought when I receive the keys?
Who has the license to process your stuff or monetize your note? Who has the authority to run that through the SEC, monetize it, bring it back around, and come out so that you can pick it up?
The bank.
So if you don't do what the bank wants, are they going to let you do it?
Okay.
Yeah, but don't you go to a hearing called a closing?
Right.
What are they closing? No, they're closing the accounts if you know what you're doing. Has the bank already got the money to buy the home? Where did it get it from? From the Federal Reserve, and it got it from your account. Okay, but see, that was liability funds that came back there. Look, at liability funds stay on the liability side. Asset funds, even though they technically went through the bank and the SEC, those people take silent judicial notice that that came from the private side, and we can't mess with them in public. We got to find a SEC licensed dealer and get rid of that hot potato. What does the bank have to do to get the SEC to process that note? What do they have to do to it? And when they present it, what do they have to do to present it? Endorse it. What did they just do to that promissory note when they endorsed it? They turned it into a money order, and they've been paid.
And they're licensed to do it under the...
This man is not liable on a note once they endorse it, because they've converted the promise and they've cashed it out. They have no standing to come back against the man. Are they ever going to come against the man? No, they don't deal with living people. So do they care if they endorsed it? No, because once the note is endorsed, they've converted it. It's no longer a promise to pay. They got paid. So the man has no duty to pay that note. What are they foreclosing on? The second contract. When you go in there and you compel them to produce the note, why do they never produce the note? Because they're not foreclosing on the note, they're foreclosing on the second contract. They don't have to produce the note because the note's what made you a creditor. Why the hell would they produce evidence that made you a creditor at a foreclosure? What you need to do is you need to have them produce the mortgage deed or the trust deed. But the mortgage deed and trust deed says you've promised to pay. The mortgage deed and the trust deed is no good unless they hold the note against which they're foreclosing. Do they hold the note? No. So the mortgage deed or the trust deed is invalid in and of itself without an attached note because they come in a pair. But you never raise that issue if you wanted to argue in the public, which I don't advise. Yes, ma'am, we need to have a mic. I knew if we started talking about money, we'd get a lot of questions. It's really confusing. Go ahead.
I did argue.
Is it on? Is it off?
I did argue about
How'd
the
that
note.
go?
They showed me the note, the original note. I saw it. I felt
What
it.
was on the back of the note?
Nothing.
Well, when they held the note, actually, I don't believe that in a heartbeat. Maybe it was a counterfeit or something.
I felt my signature. I mean, I had my finger on everything. Attached to it was a paper saying that they assigned the note from company A to company B, but there was nothing on in the back.
Who was the lender? Original lender?
I've got 4 going or 7 going. I can't
See,
remember.
Was it a big bank, or was it like a private lender? Or?
I think this was eventually the Bank of America.
No, not eventually. The initial lender.
It was ABC.
Small bank or big bank?
Yeah, it wasn't even a bank. It was like a mortgage
Okay, a
company.
private party then.
So it was a private loan.
Okay, because see, they
They don't know how to monetize it.
if they didn't monetize it, they would have to come up with private investment funds to pay off the obligation, which means they truly held the note. And if they truly held the note against the second contract, then they've got a cause of action. But you see, the way everything is going to, that doesn't mean you don't have a remedy.
No, it means your remedy isn't about the securitization of a note. Your remedy is close the account or settle the account, handle the title, handle possession. So that's why what a perfect example of why you don't want to go argue the merits or the facts of the case. In the case of a private lender who actually put up their own money, you have no argument.
You wouldn't anyway, because they didn't do anything illegal or wrong. They just used a different process. But the important thing, like Brandon's saying, is they're personally liable in there because they use their collateral to pay down your debt. So they got a cause of action there.
Right, but they did sell it to Bank of America.
They've
who
got a
paid them.
subrogation.
So they...
All right, to help everybody out that is in trustee training, so they're clear on what's happening to help everybody out, to make sure they know